Symfonos is another intentionally vulnerable Linux VM and is the first in the series of 5 that we'll be covering in this course. Let's get to work. First of all, we're going to import the OVF file. So double click that. I'm going to name that Symfonos 1. Click import. Just check the network settings real quick. So right click, settings, network. Okay, good. We have the host only adapter. That's what we want. Go ahead and start up the Symfonos 1 VM. Start up your Kali Linux box if you don't have it on already, and switch over to that once this is booted up. First thing we want to do is find the IP address of Symfonos 1. So open up your terminal, use netdiscover -i eth1 for the host only interface. Okay, got the IP address. Now let's run our nmap scan. We have a relatively big attack surface here. We have SSH over port 22, SMTP over port 25, HTTP over port 80, and Samba over ports 139 and 445. So what I want to do now is check out Apache web server first over port 80. I'm just going to minimize that, open up a web browser, and let's go. Still have that stuff from my last one. Let's go to this IP address of Symfonos 1. Okay, so we have a picture here. All right, I'm just going to do Control U. It's going to inspect the HTML and view its source. So I see nothing except for image source image.jpg. So that's what this is right here. I'm just going to save that, see if there's any metadata there that we can analyze. I'm going to save that to my downloads folder. Let's just minimize that. Go back to our terminal here. Just cleared out the screen. And we're going to go to the downloads folder. So the file that we just downloaded, it's index.jpg. Okay, so what I want to do here is run strings on this JPEG file. Okay, I see nothing here except for this string. So Wikipedia page that says Peter Paul Rubens, The Fall of the Phaeton. So it's some sort of artwork that may be some sort of clue, but so far no directly relevant findings. So let's clear that out. And I'm going to try to brute force some web directories with dir-b. So dir-b, http :// and the IP address of Symfonos 1. We have nothing so far except for a bunch of default Apache files. We're not getting anywhere with port 80, so let's just switch gears and move to Samba instead. So I'm just going to clear this out, and I'm going to use a tool called Enum for Linux. So just type in Enum for Linux and the IP address of Symfonos 1. Start here from the top. Okay, looks like we have the version of Samba here, 4.5.16. And we have enumerated some shares here. We have a share name Helios and Anonymous. Okay. So we can map out the anonymous share, but not the others. So looks like Helios is a user. That's relevant information. Okay, we have password policy that's potentially useful for a brute force attack. All right. I was trying to enumerate users here. So here it is, Helios, local user. All right, so the important information here is that we're able to access the anonymous share. I'm just going to clear that out for right now. And we're going to use SMB client to access that anonymous share. So we have SMB client / / IP address of Symfonos 1 / anonymous. And we should be able to get in there with no passwords. I'm just going to hit enter. All right. Looks like we are in. And I have one file in here called attention.txt. So I'm just going to get that. So get attention.txt. Okay, we got it. Just going to exit out. And let's see what attention.txt has for us. Attention.txt has instructions here for users to stop using passwords like Epidioco, QWERTY, and baseball. So what I'm going to try to do is log on to the Helios user that we saw earlier in the enum for Linux output and try all three of these passwords. So SMB client, IP address of Symfonos 1, Helios, and a uppercase U switch to specify the Helios user. And we're going to try all these passwords here. So first we have Epidioco. Did not work. Now we're going to try the second one. Okay, so QWERTY is the correct password for the user Helios for this Samba share. Let's see what's in there. We have research.txt and todo.txt. So let's get both of those and see what they are. All right, just downloaded both of those files, exit out, and let's see what they have. So I'm just going to clear out first. Cat research.txt, cat todo.txt. Okay, the first one has something about Greek mythology. Could be useful, I'm not sure, but the second one has a set of, what's a to-do list. So binge watch Dexter, dance, and work on Helios in Leet speak. So we're going to just copy that because it looks like a web directory. I'm going to minimize that, and we're going back to web browser here. And IP address of Symfonos. And we have Helios right there. We just copied that. Okay, so we have a WordPress site here. And if I hover over these links, if you see at the bottom left corner, it's trying to resolve to symphonos.local. Okay. So if you try to go to symphonos.local, it's not a real, or you can't resolve to it because we're going to have to change our settings in Etsy hosts in order to access these various resources. So let's go ahead and do that now. Just minimize this real quick and go back. I'm going to open this terminal here. All right, so just VI Etsy hosts. And at the bottom here, we're going to add a line, IP address of Symfonos 1, specify symphonos.local. We're going to save that. Now we should be able to access the Symfonos resources. So let's just reload this page. All right. As you see, it's all rendering properly now, and we should be able to access any of these symphonos.local resources. Now let's run WP scan in order to enumerate potential vulnerabilities in WordPress, vulnerable plugins, and try to enumerate users. But before we do that, I need to tell you something. There's a new thing that we have to do with WP scan. They require us to have a API token in order to query the vulnerability database. Without this, it's essentially useless because the whole point is to be able to find vulnerabilities. So luckily, it's free. You can register for it, 50i API requests per day, which is pretty decent. I'd rather, if you're using this on a regular basis, it'd probably be best to just buy it. But anyway, register to that. If you want to skip this section and just check out my results, you can do that as well. So what we're going to do now is run WP scan. So as you see here, we have WP scan specifying the URL and the location of the WordPress installation. And we have the API token switch with my API token. Yours is going to be different, obviously, and mine's obfuscated so nobody eats up all my API requests. So we have the enumerate switch. We're going to enumerate plugins and users. So hit enter once you got all that. Okay, so see a bunch of vulnerabilities identified, a bunch of cross-site scripting vulnerabilities based on the version. So let's see, we have unauthenticated view of posts, cache poisoning, I saw up there open redirection. So these are all good for a real penetration test to explore as far as findings. But what we want to do is gain root access to this box. So what I see down here is a local file inclusion. Perhaps we can leverage that to get some information that'll push us further towards our goal. So let's check out Seclist right now, see if there's a proof of concept that we can use. All right here, proof of concept. So we have the host, which needs to be our host. So I'm just going to copy from WP content onto the end. Looks like it's trying to gain access to the Etsy password file. So let's see if we can actually do that. I'm just going to paste that proof of concept right here in the URL. Okay, there we go. So we have Etsy password. Here's the results. Okay. Yeah, see? We have the user Helios here. Anyway, let's see if we can use this to somehow gain root access. Okay, so I'm going to go all the way to the right here to the Ajax underscore path parameter. And instead of Etsy password, I'm going to change it to /var/mail/Helios. Now I'm going to explain why I'm doing that, because I recall SMTP being open on port 25, and there's a well-known method of poisoning SMTP in conjunction with LFI to accomplish remote code execution. And that's what we ultimately want if we're going to get into the target system. So let's see if we can actually access this resource here, var mail Helios. Okay, we definitely can. So now we are going to connect manually to SMTP using Telnet. Let's just minimize that. We no longer need these results, so clear that out. And we can type in Telnet, IP address, and we're going to specify a port of 25. Now I'm going to send a malicious email and include some PHP code that we can hopefully utilize in a parameterized request in our LFI exploit. So let's give that a shot right now. I'm going to just type in mail from Jesse at Symfonos at .local domain. All right. Receipt 2. Helios at Symfonos.local domain. Sending it to Helios, so it should be in their mailbox, and we should be able to see it rendered when we request that resource like we just did with LFI. All right. So I'm going to put in data, and we have PHP system get cmd. All right, so that should create a parameter that will allow us to execute system commands. That's the goal here. We got that. Just dot, that's to send it. So it said okay queued, so it should be sent. Now let's just quit out. And now let's make sure that that worked. All right, so back to Firefox, and we have the path var mail Helios, just like before. I'm going to include the parameter cmd equals ID. So what I'm trying to do with that is to utilize the PHP code that I just sent with SMTP to execute the ID command. All right. So at the very bottom here, there's the ID command, or the results from it at least. And now I'm just going to do ifconfig to further show you that it's working. Okay, maybe ifconfig doesn't work, but ID did work. Let's do who am I? Helios. Okay, so we're able to execute system commands. Now that we know we can achieve remote code execution, let's run netcat and set up a listener. So we're listening on port 443, and we will try to put in a reverse shell payload with Python and get a reverse shell back to netcat. So let's have that listening in the background. We're just going to go back to Firefox here. So instead of who am I, I'm going to paste a Python. Let's remove that. We have this Python reverse shell payload. IP address has to be the IP address of your Kali Linux box with port 443. So just go ahead and enter that. And it should just spin and not really ever connect, but you do have a reverse shell that'll come back to netcat. So now we are in, as you can see here, we have our web shell. All right, let's see if we can use anything in sudo. All right, command not found. Let me see if we have to specify the full file path of it. All right. Looks like we cannot use sudo. All right, so no worries. Let's try to find any files that are owned by root. So this is a standard practice when enumerating system post-exploitation. So I'll show you this find command here. We're just setting these parameters to search for files that are owned by root, and this dev null here is to suppress errors so you have a nice clean output. I see something called opt status check, which is not a default binary, so it stands out to me. So let's go ahead and see what that does. All right. So what does that do? It just receives a response from a web server. So what I'm going to do is run the strings command on status check to see if we can get any relevant information from it. Let's see here, go to the top. All right. Okay, I see a command here. So curl hyphen capital I, capital H, and local host. So that's the full command. It's chopped up into separate lines. So I can assume that that's what this command is doing because it's getting a response from the web server. So let me just run this command up here in my terminal, see if it gets the same results. Okay. So we have, oh, we can't clear. All right. Do what I just did before. So opt status check. And now I'm going to just copy or repeat the command that I saw in the strings command results. So here it is. We have curl capital I H and http://localhost. Okay, same exact results. So now that I know that I can run that as root, I want to find a way to abuse this to create a scenario where we can get a root shell. I want to replace the curl binary with a malicious binary that is going to allow us to spawn a root shell. So let's just go to the temp directory, cd/tmp, and I'm going to create an executable that will spawn a shell for us and give us root permissions. So I'm going to just type in echo bin sh enclosed in double quotes, and I'm going to put that into a file named curl. And now I'm going to change the permissions. So chmod 755 curl, make it executable. And now we're going to change the default path to the TMP directory. All right, so this is going to make that executable opt status check think that curl is in this directory. So it's going to use this curl instead of the one by default. Now, export path equals /tmp $path. Okay, so now we should be able to launch status check and have it execute this curl executable to spawn a root shell. Let's try it out. So opt status check. All right. Okay, yes, it did work. If you see here, we're now logged in with root privileges. So let's just spawn a TTY shell. Don't need to, but why not? Now let's go to our root folder. There's our flag, so let's just cat our flag. All right, so we're done here. Now, just in case you're wondering how I'd cleared the screen, I did export term equals screen. After I did that, I was able to clear and do a couple other things. So anyway, we're done here. Let's move on to the next one.